is the author of more than 100 books for children and young adults. He has twice won the AAP Distinguished Achievement Award for his nonfiction. His Finnegan Swank mystery series was selected by Agatha Awards to be among the best mysteries for children in 2002 and 2003. Dahl collects books on poisons and graveyards and lives in a haunted house in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Currently, he is editorial director for Stone Arch Books.
Well, this series is very exciting, called The Library of Doom, and it all takes place centered around this gigantic library, which is huge. It's bigger than anything you can imagine. It's like the Pentagon of books. And it's also the most secret library in the world. And it just happens to have the collection of the world's most dangerous books. There are books there that can change your shape, or that might suck you into them, or there are books that might destroy buildings or have evil powers. And because they're so powerful and dangerous, they have to be kept in this library, and they have to be watched over by an individual who is called the librarian. And every generation there's a new librarian, and it is their duty to make sure those books are kept away from other people, because they're just far too dangerous to open up and even read. So each book in the series is a separate adventure where the librarian has to find one of those books and keep it from wreaking havoc on humanity. So there's all kinds of things happening in the library. We never really come to the end of it. There's always something new, something mysterious. And again, each generation has a new hero who happens to be called the librarian, and he has special powers. So he can fly, he can change himself into things. We don't quite understand where he comes from, or maybe where his family's from, but that's part of the mystery. That sort of adds to the whole, you know, the shadowy nature and the atmosphere of the story. The Library of Doom books are different in that it takes place in a whole new universe. I've always liked mysteries. I like reading mysteries. I've liked writing mysteries in the past. But I wanted to write a series of books that took place in a world that I could create. You know, a lot of fantasy writers and science fiction writers get to do that, maybe create new planets or universes or galaxies. And here I got to create a whole world that was contained in a single library, which I thought was sort of cool. When I was a kid, I hung out at the library a lot. I thought the libraries were fun places because, you know, you could walk down these creepy hallways that were filled with books on each side. And they're always quiet places. Or you'd find books that you don't have at home or at school, really cool picture books, that show you art and people from different countries. I mean, I liked hanging out at the library. So I thought it would also be fun to set a series in a library. And then the other thing that makes these books unique is, how could I tell a story using a very few words? You know, lots of authors write books that are 300 or 400 pages long. And you may think that that's a lot of work, and it is, but it's actually harder to write a story with fewer words. And I thought this would be a neat challenge. How could you write something that's really spooky and creepy and fun and exciting, but do it with as few words as possible, and do it with really good, the best words? When I was growing up, the library was a cool place. It was a fun place. And I know this sounds weird too, but I always thought the library is a place where you get to listen to dead people. Because, see, dead people write those books, and they've been gone for like 100 or 200 years. So you can actually hear what they say by reading those books. I know that sounds weird, but that's what I liked about it. So the library was a cool place. That's what inspired me to do books set in a library. And you know, all the fantasy stories I've ever read, all the science fiction stories I've read, I've never read one where the librarian was the hero. So I thought that would be fun, to use someone who actually worked in a library to be this really cool hero. So all those things sort of came together and jumbled up, and then you talk with friends and you bounce ideas off of them, and somehow all that comes out into a book. Yes, there are more books planned. There are at least 6 more coming out, and they're really cool. And one of them is called The Golden Book of Death. And that is where the librarian himself gets trapped by a book. There's another one called The Word Eater. And in that book, someone buys a book at like a flea market or a store, and when he touches the book, he actually gets a sliver from the cover in his finger. And it starts to work in his bloodstream, and he begins to change shape, and he turns into a monster. And this kind of monster doesn't live on blood, it lives on words. So that's a pretty cool story. Think of the possibilities. So those are just some of the books that are coming out, but there will be 6 more in that series. Couple things. I think all of us like that rush, that adrenaline rush. It's exciting. It's like being on a scary ride. And I think too that all of us are scared at one point in our lives, or we always imagine things. You know, when you're a kid, you imagine something's under the bed, or something evil's in the closet, or is in the shadows. And then as you grow up, you realize there's nothing there. But we still think about those things. Of course, I remember my grandfather always saying to me that there's nothing out there in the dark that's any scarier than you are. So I thought that was pretty cool. Oh, okay, that's true. But I think we like scary stories because we all experience fear, and a scary story usually has a happy ending, so it gets us through it. So we're able to feel scared and feel that excitement, and at the end, we can sort of sigh and relax and realize that life has gone back to normal. But at the same time, we got that little excitement and adventure along the way. When I was a kid, I read lots of books and lots of types of stories. But I'd have to say my favorite writers were J.R. Tolkien, The Lord of the Rings, and C.S. Lewis, the fantasy Narnia stories. I loved all of those. And then, I loved Agatha Christie. I started reading her in 5th grade. I loved those mysteries. I loved the fact that she always tricked me. I never knew how the book was going to end. And Edgar Rice Burroughs, he's the guy who invented Tarzan, but he also wrote series where there were adventures on the planet Mars, on the planet Venus. And then the other guy I spent lots of money on books was Robert E. Howard, and he created Conan the Barbarian. And years before the movie ever came out, I was reading all the books. And in our family, we would go shopping once a week, every Saturday, and I would always go to the drugstore, and that's where I'd pick up my favorite paperback, and it'd be probably one of those books.